Are you overwhelmed by the challenge of personalizing communication for thousands of students? That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. From nudging prospective students to guiding those already on their journey, AI assistants don't just automate. They write, build, and optimize every step of your digital campaigns. Discover how at element451.com/AI team.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Hello, Enrollify listeners. We are so glad to have you with us today. I'm Carrie Phillips, and we are on location today recording at HashtagHigherEd here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Once again, I'm Carrie Phillips. I'm the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at UA Little Rock, and today I am joined by my former boss and colleague, Dr. Blake Bedsole. He is the Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management at Troy University. Thanks for being here, Blake.
Thanks for having me, Carrie. It's great to be back together, especially discussing something so crucial as leadership.
Absolutely. And we're going to start talking leadership and the enrollment cliff because they're really intersectioned and they relate together. And so I want to start off by talking through how we can use leadership to approach some of the challenges. And that's something that I think you really helped me understand when we worked together a few years ago now.
That's great.
So setting the stage, let's just start with some context. You know, we've heard about the enrollment cliff, this idea that birth rates are declining, that's going to be hitting colleges hard. We're seeing shrinking high school numbers, all of these things. And, you know, this spring we saw that manifest in university closures, and that Hetchinger data showed that we were averaging one closure a week by the time we got to spring. And so we're talking on a panel tomorrow on this exact same topic. And one of the things that I think is going to come up is this isn't just a membership problem. It really is a leadership challenge. So how do you see leadership playing into the enrollment cliff?
I think you just nailed part of it, and that's being able to clearly articulate the landscape, not just nationally, but how it affects your institution. And so those conversations have to happen upward to your senior leadership. They've got to happen with your peers around the university and down to your entire division. I think having a clear scope of the data and a clear vision of what your current environment is for your institution and your peer set, I think that's extremely important. You know, in my example, in Alabama, what happens out west and what happens in the Northeast is not going to impact us much as what happens, you know, down south, right? And so if you're a regional public, owning that region, if you're a more elite institution, kind of knowing who your competitors are. But I think it's really, really important to know that data and how it's going to impact you 1, 5, 10 years down the road and be able to make a plan for those out years. Yeah. And I was just, at our level of the org chart, I think another thing that we have to do is make sure your team's taken care of. It is a leadership challenge. People are burnt out. People are stressed. We're seeing record retirements at kind of, you know, the higher levels of enrollment management, and that bench depth is having to step up. So recruitment is stressful. This environment is stressful. And so do whatever you can to advocate for your people and maintain that cohesion on your teams while also trying to build up your bench depth for the inevitable departure when they do come. So sending your team to conferences like this one, or debriefing with them when you get to go to conferences that they can't go to, and kind of keeping them in the loop, try to bring them to senior leadership meetings so they know how that kind of cabinet level operates. I think they're simple steps, but they can go a long way into making sure your team feels appreciated and also makes you feel comfortable that the institution has a clear path forward.
I think you make a really good point there about, bringing your people into that conversation. That is something that I remember you would always do with me when we worked together is, I may not have been invited to a meeting, but you would always say, hey, I'm going to be there, but could I bring my marketing director? And would always invite me into that space. And I don't know that I fully realized it at the time, but it really was preparing me for leadership, that it's not just, making that decision in the moment. It's about giving others the opportunity to see that big picture. And so as we talk about, today's higher ed environment and the challenges and that kind of leadership is essential, how do we think about that? How do we do it?
No, I think that's super important. None of us are an island, right? And we certainly can't operate that way. We talk a lot about breaking silos on our team, right? Like there doesn't need to be a traditional fence between academics and enrollment or enrollment and marketing or, whatever the case may be. So it's definitely a team effort. I think most institutions and their senior leaderships are aware of how important enrollment is to the longevity of an institution, and how important it is to kind of keep those steady, dependable enrollment streams, and how competitive the environment has gotten. And they're taking steps to plan for that and get that message out across campus. I would say if you feel like your institution maybe doesn't have a handle on that, that may be a leadership void that you can fill in terms of being that, advocate for shoring up enrollment, shoring up marketing to make sure that your, enrollment doesn't take a hit in the future.
You're right. I've been blessed to be at places where there's been that really good relationship. And so it's been a lockstep conversation of what was happening on the marketing side was supporting enrollment. What was happening on the enrollment side was, helping inform the marketing. And there was this real back and forth. And so I think, though, part of the issue is we talk about it from, recruitment only, but there's so much more to the enrollment cliff, as we think about retention, reengaging adult learners, changing who the students are that we maybe think about. So you've led enrollment strategy at several institutions. As you're thinking about this for your own institution or really any institution, how do you start those conversations? And what are the key things that enrollment and marketing leaders should be thinking about as possible strategies?
Yeah, I think that's another great point. It really does start with the overall enrollment picture, and making sure retention efforts are emphasized. New starts are always going to be important, and that always gets a lot of the share of conversation, right? But I think people hopefully are kind of realizing the importance of retention now. As an enrollment manager, I'm sure you feel it as a marketer. There's nothing more frustrating than bringing in a record class or finally showing improvement after years of downturns, and then the overall enrollment number still suffering because of retention losses. And so if retention isn't in your portfolio as kind of a chief officer, I think one of the most important relationships you can go out and try to build is with your institution's chief academic officer or whoever owns that retention portfolio. The most successful strategic enrollment plans I've been a part of, and you've been a part of this planning with us, is where the academic side of the house was equally involved and motivated to both help with the student intake side of things, but also pay attention to improving student success efforts so that overall number can continue to be healthy. You mentioned another thing that's really important to me, and that's emphasizing the importance of diverse recruitment streams. We all know how competitive traditional freshman market is getting, and that's going to only continue to exponentially increase as those demographics do change. And so what do you do to compensate for that? If you are trying to grow your enrollment back as an institution, maybe it is completion programs for adult learners, maybe it's being there for your military and more online, or programs that they can complete. Maybe it's niche graduate programs or doing more international markets, but it's important to know your institution's mission, because we don't all need to be all things to all people. I hate seeing some of the mission creep that's out there, even amongst our regional public, peers sometimes, but it's important to know your institution's mission. What is your best fit strategy, and how can you diagnose those alternative streams of enrollment if you are planning to grow or even maintain and kind of shape your classes in this new hyper competitive environment? And marketing plays a huge part in that. Like I said, with retention, if that's not in your portfolio as a chief enrollment officer, I think that's another crucial relationship to build. I don't have marketing in my portfolio at Troy. I have a counterpart that's the associate vice chancellor of marketing communication. We started on the same day back in January, and both of us have kind of made that conscious decision to talk through things with each other, be lockstep in our plans of what's best for Troy, include meetings from both of our teams, team members from both of our teams in meetings as we discuss things. And I think we've gotten some great collaborative programs across that we probably wouldn't have been able to do individually out of either office together. And so I'm excited to see some of those things mature as we move forward.
I love how you said, doing what's right for the university. Sometimes we get really territorial in this work of, oh, this is my space, this is your space. And so we don't always do that work of what's best for the institution. And so as we talk about a crisis like the enrollment cliff, it's got to be those making decisions. It's got to be planning other folks to take on those leadership roles. You really helped in that servant leadership kind of way by encouraging me to be part of those and letting me be in those spaces. And so I think for those who are listening, this is a really great reminder that whether you're leading a team or you're just starting out, it's really important to be in that room and to be part of that conversation. So as we kind of wrap it up, any final closing thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. No, as you hit on servant leadership. That's always something that's been really important to me. One of my favorite leadership books is called The Servant, and it's about, kind of practicing servant leadership. And so I think don't set yourself up in a way that you won't let your team set up. And that goes across work environment, that goes across workload, hours, whatever. If you're going to do something, make sure that your team can take advantage of that too. Going to conferences, like we mentioned, letting everybody at all levels get advantage of travel. I think that's huge. And recognizing that we need leaders at all levels of the org chart. Leadership is something you can practice as an entry-level employee, as a mid-level manager, as a senior manager. You'll find out that you'll get as much done managing up or managing sideways as you do managing down, maybe even more so. And so I think that's important. For those that are looking to elevate in the profession, I said a final point that I would stress is learning how to budget, right? Learn those numbers, learn your budget, know what you're spending, know what your ROI for any given project is, because that's what your CFO is going to want to hear. That's what your boss is going to want to know. If you can show that ROI and show that you are a good steward of your funds, and that when I recommend something, we're going to produce a return for the institution, in net revenue of student enrollment, that's how you're going to be able to get more investment in the future and also show your team's value to the institution. So I think that's really important.
Well, thank you so much for taking time today to join me.
Yeah.
This has been really fun talking about our time together and talking about leadership, the enrollment cliff, and the intersectionality of all of those. Excited for the panel as well, and talking about strategies for how we might mitigate the enrollment cliff. Enrollify listeners, thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you've enjoyed some great insights, and until next time, carry on.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.